Okay, Doug, you
All
can
right.
go ahead and call the meeting.
Call this meeting of the Ohio City Design Review Committee to order. Present, we have myself, Doug Wall, and it looks like Margaret Land, and I can't see anybody else, but I'm sure there are others present. Nate, who else is attending?
Yeah, I'll just call the roll. Doug Wall,
Here.
Margaret Land,
Here.
Marika Clark,
Here.
and Alex Frondorf.
Here.
Great. So we'll go ahead and get started. Our first project is a new storefront proposal at 2545 Lorraine Avenue. This project is being presented for conceptual approval, and please note that any signage is not proposed as part of today's review. So go ahead whenever you're ready, applicant.
Great, thanks, Nate. My name is Joe Delray. I'm with United Bank Building and MRN. And today we're going to present a little storefront modification for a series of windows that front on West 26th Street. What we're looking to do is Voodoo Monkey Tattoo has been a long time tenant of ours and a long time community member along the West 25th Street commercial corridor there. And what we've come to find out is that the building that they're in actually needs some pretty significant repairs, such that it would render us doing those repairs is going to render their location unusable for a good portion of time. And so what we talked with them about is relocating them, moving them to an available property in the center there. And what happened was back in March, Leap was an office tenant, vacated the first floor of 2545 Lorraine, which fronts on West 26th Street and Lorraine. The Lorraine frontage is occupied by Boaz and Dave's Cosmic Subs, but the back portion, which is shown here as proposed Voodoo Monkey Tattoo, is just vacant office. And so they love the idea of having more of a well thought out floor plan and a more stable building. And so we approached them about relocating there. And so today's plan kind of shows the alterations we'd make to the storefront on West 26th Street to allow for this. This slide just kind of shows what I call the annex building. It's actually, I think it was called the Athens Bakery building for a while. Doug probably knows better than I do. This shows the proposed floor plan for Voodoo Monkey as superimposed over the site plan there. As you can see at the corner of Lorraine and 26 is the layout for Boaz. Just to the east of that is Dave's Cosmic Subs, and the area highlighted in green would be occupied by Voodoo Monkey Tattoo. And again, this just kind of shows the demolition plan of the interior walls that we'd be removing. Just basically the floor plan for the property. And then this shows the floor plan incorporated into the building there. One of the things you're going to notice is basically in the middle top part of the page, there's a little area there called a common vestibule. And this is really what we're talking about today. This common vestibule would be a door opening up to West 26th Street with two interior doors. The interior door to the, I believe, maybe the south would be the main entrance for Voodoo Monkey. And then there'd be a door that enters to the north that goes into Boaz. That would just be a second means of egress for them. I don't believe they require it, but it's something that they're desirous of in terms of having a service entrance. And so we had approached Fadi and his crew there, and they were actually really excited about this idea of being able to service their restaurant, particularly their grease trap off of West 26th Street, and just having a second door where their employees could come in and out. What we have rendered here just kind of shows the demolition of one of the, what we could call a bay of the storefront there, and then replacing it with a single, I think it's a 7-foot tall door with a transom window over it, and then a piece of storefront to the next. If you go to the next slide, it shows in a little bit more detail, kind of what we're proposing there. On the left of the page is the existing condition with those truly amazing blinds. On the right shows the proposed modifications with the door, the transom window over the door, and then the storefront glass next to it. And if you'll notice, we do continue that kind of base wainscoting element all along the bottom of the storefront. A little bit more detail there. As Nate mentioned, the signage is just for impressions only. The tenant would come back through with their actual signage package. And then also really quick note here, at the same time that we're doing this work, we're also going to endeavor to do a little bit of maintenance along the base of the facade. In the basement there, we can see a little bit of shoring up that needs to happen. The actual, I guess we'll call it wainscoting or footer there under the storefront glass, starting to lean in a little bit. So we're going to go in under both Boaz as well as the proposed Voodoo Monkey area and shore that up while this is all open. One other thing rendered here is a slight grade adjustment to bring the pedestrian access up to the door height with an appropriate step there. If you go to the next page, Nate. Nope, that's it.
Do have another document from you guys, but I think it was just
Just the application.
yeah. Yep.
Cool.
Would that doorway then be ADA accessible, or there's still a step there?
David, are you showing that as having ADA access, or if you go back to the site plan, I think ADA access would be provided through the second means of egress. So I don't know if I can articulate this, but there is a large door here on the south facade. So if you look at the left part of your page, there is a significant ramp system here that allows for access to this common lobby. You'll see that you come in through that door on the left, or what's the south facade, and you'd enter through a second door that gets you into the space. There's also an ADA accessible unisex bathroom at the bottom of the page.
Joe's correct. The building is currently provided with ADA access through that rear door into the elevator lobby. The reason that we're showing that sloped surface on the sidewalk out there is right now there's about an 11-inch step up to the stone base that you can see in the exterior images. What we're trying to do is to mitigate that, to at least get that step into something that would be more code appropriate, basically 7 inches or less, which is similar to what Boaz and Dave's Cosmic Subs, as well as that third door on the Lorraine facade have currently. They all step up into the space. None of them at that point are ADA accessible in their current configuration, but Voodoo Monkey Tattoo will have ADA access through that rear door.
I think you said this and I may have missed it, but are you moving them temporarily or permanently into the space?
No, this would be their permanent new home.
Can you go back to the page with the rendering of the facade? Yeah. So does that new line for the door that you're adding in, does that continue down the line of the clear story divider, or is that slightly to the left?
I wonder if it's off center. If you go up one page, you might get a clearer view of how it lines up.
It looks like it doesn't quite line up. Is that right? If you zoom way into the door.
I think that'd be something we could easily mitigate. What we're trying to do is provide a common size door. So what we could do is one of two things. We could provide some additional furring to the left on the hinge side of that door, which is really similar to what the bay to the right and two doors down have. They actually have an 8-inch section of furred out space between the masonry or the wood columns and the start of the storefront. That would push the door over to the right a little bit. Or the other option would be obviously to provide a larger door. I think that may have some ramifications under the vestibule, and it may cause us to need to modify that sidewalk a little bit more, maybe, you know, another 6 inches or so. I think either one would be fine. Architecturally, in terms of the interior code, and I guess aesthetically, you know, I think we would be fine either way.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think that, I mean, maybe others have thoughts on if they have a, you know, preference for one of those options, but to me, either of those would be fine. But I just think, I think something so that that line continues down would make it a cleaner facade. It's just like, it's so like narrowly off that I think it's just gonna look a little bit like it got put in the wrong place.
I agree. I think one of the other things we'll do is we'll locate that that mullion in the clerestory window, so that way we know exactly where it is. I'm positive that its location is going to allow for an appropriate minimum size door in that space, and then we can adjust as necessary to get that alignment.
So let me ask, are you leaving all the transom? You're not doing anything with the transom area. This is all below the transom, is that correct?
Nope, the transom stays.
Okay. Well, I guess I have to agree with Marika that I think it would be better if we could, you know, modify that opening so that the jam lines up with the transom bar. And you're going to rebuild the bulkhead there in that fixed panel of glass next to the door, or you're going to leave that bulkhead?
Doug, the bulkhead at the bottom there.
Yeah.
If it can be salvaged, we'll leave it. If I have to rebuild it just because of the work that's going on in the basement there, then obviously we'd have to rebuild it.
Okay.
Is the intent to use the rear entrance like as another primary entrance?
You know what? When talking with Dave from Voodoo, initially he was going to do just that, but then the more he thought of it, this is going to be probably his main entrance. This is his front door. He imagines that most of his activity, his traffic is usually in the evenings, a little bit in the afternoon, but in the evenings. They'll park on the street, but our parking lot is also open after 6 for guest parking. And so they'll probably pull up, see this front door, enter there if they park on the street, but have the ability to enter through the 25th Street door or parking lot door as well.
Mm-hmm. And is that proposed door a wood door?
Dave, I think you're showing an aluminum door there, right?
Yeah, I think that the door could certainly be aluminum that's got a painted finish to match the color of either the secondary trim or the main mullions here. But I would think that the rest of the construction will be replaced in kind to maintain the wood that's being used on the rest of the window systems.
Well, it looks like what you're showing there is a wood 3/4 light door with a panel in the lower portion. I don't know how you could do that. I've never seen that done in an aluminum door to make it look like wood. So I'm wondering if that's correct. Also, I mean, this is a small elevation, but there. Now that looks like a wooden. So you figured out a way to make an aluminum door with that panel near the bottom?
They do have some panelized aluminum doors. I think the aluminum door would be our best case solution for wear and tear in that area. If I think a wood door would be an acceptable alternative, in my opinion, if Mr. Del Rey approves. And I think the most important thing that we need to do with that door is to match the paneling at the bottom in terms of scale and trim profile to maintain that look across the bulkhead, like you mentioned earlier. So that'll be our driving factor, and we can adjust as necessary until we get that right.
So without having a more detailed drawing of the door, I can't really tell what, like the bottom rail of the door should be thicker than what it looks like there, but I can't really tell. It looks like you've got the rail between the panel and the glass at, I don't know, maybe 6 inches, but it looks like the bottom rail of the door is maybe only 4 inches. That would be weird. I guess I can accept if you can actually make an aluminum door with a panel that looks traditional like that. I'm thinking that I could accept that, but without seeing more detail on the door, I can't really judge that accurately.
I think after this meeting, David, we can reach out to Joanne at Botsum and get some ideas what the doors that she has available are.
Yeah, that specification is certainly going to be important.
Yeah, show how the panel is actually, fabricated in the door to see whether it looks, hokey or looks like a good, like it looks appropriate, as, clearly originally they would have been wood doors if there was something there. So I think the 3/4 light door is appropriate. Is that a 7-foot tall door you're showing there? I just know dimensions on that.
I think on the next page up, there's dimensions.
It is a 7-foot door. The reason we chose that door is the transom above the door is now similarly sized to the clerestory at the top row. So we felt that was about the right height for that application.
Yes, I do too. So I think that's a smart move. I just couldn't see the dimensions on that elevation. So like when you look at this elevation, it looks like there's no bottom rail on the door. It looks like you've got a panel and the panel's just about down at the floor level, which again is a little off. So
yeah, I mean, typically with a stick-built door, you would have a horizontal runner at the bottom that is similar in size to both the one below the glass, potentially the one above the glass too. In our effort to align with the existing conditions, we made some assumptions here, I think, and depending on the material of that door chosen, the modifications to that bottom panel, I think would be pretty minimal. If we're doing a 5-inch style, I think it'd be a little bit larger, but to keep that door feeling light like the rest of the windows do, and we have such large panes of glass here and such minimal mullions that I would think we probably want a narrow style door in here, which aluminum is going to give us a better benefit for that with a 2.5-inch style. And then Doug, you are correct that typically the bottom rail may be a little bit larger, but I think in this instance, to best replicate that panel, we're going to try to minimize what those styles and rails are doing and let the 3/4 light in that bottom panel be more reflective of the existing conditions across the facade.
yes, like I said, I think I could live with the idea of an aluminum door, but I want to see how that panel is fabricated so it doesn't look like, it doesn't look like a hokey representation of a wood door.
Yes, sir.
Anyone have any additional comments or questions?
Did we talk at all about, I apologize, I was a little bit late to the meeting. Did we talk at all about the signage?
The signage is not proposed as part of today's review. So this is conceptual for the storefront, and then the signage will come back at a later date.
Oh, okay. I guess my only thought was just to make sure you're including like dimensions for the signage when you get to that point.
All right, any other comments or questions? I think we've covered most of the items here with the recommendation. Joe, do you feel like you have a direction here to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get you some details on the door and the door profile. David will work to align that bottom jamb there with the top divider of the two transom windows above. Are there any other questions or recommendations?
I guess that covers
Your
it.
sensitivity on the design. It looks nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, Joe and David.
Yeah. We'll look forward to seeing the final version.
We'll move to our next applicant at 3929 Lorraine Avenue. This is also a conceptual review for a renovation. And I believe Caitlin Tomaszek is here for this.
Actually, I'm gonna, this is Pat Thornton. I'm gonna handle this for Catalin. She's gonna listen in. It's her first presentation to any of the Cleveland Neighborhood Design Commission. So I thought I'd show her the path a little bit. So I'm Pat Thornton, I'm the president of Sixmo. We are working with Zach Cooper on his new location, Sartorial. This is located at 3929 Lorraine Avenue. This is a former funeral home. It has been sitting empty for quite a while. And Zach has come along to try to occupy the building. Building was built in the 20s. It's an existing brick facade facing Lorraine Road with cable suspended metal canopy. It's got a strange curve in that metal canopy. There's a marble veneer at the lower portion of the front facade that we believe was placed there sometime in the past in order to cover up some damage and to try to dress the building up, probably back in the 50s. What we are proposing is a series of improvements to basically the front facade of the building with some minor improvements to the sides. The west side of the building has a big metal canopy, big arching metal canopy that I believe was at one point the weather protection for funeral processions and bringing things in and out of the building. We're going to propose to remove that. And then the next thing that we would be doing is removing that ugly marble looking thin veneer from the water table of the front facade of the building. That will be our opportunity to repair and replace the brick that's behind it, the facade that's behind it. So we'll be trying to replace that and match as closely as possible to the existing brick, and we'll get into how we'll manage that here in a moment. Then on the front facade, we'll be replacing the windows in the storefront with black metal frame. It'll probably be aluminum tube. We haven't drilled that specific material down yet, but aluminum tube frame. The upper windows will be operable as they lead to some future unoccupied tenant space. The lower windows would be fixed. The storefront obviously would be a pair of doors that matches exactly what's there. It'll be operable. We're then also going to reclad that canopy. We're actually going to reshape and then reclad that canopy. We'd like to take that curve out of the front of that canopy and then reclad that in a copper colored composite metal, and then stabilize the support cables and probably paint those support cables up too. I think we've proposed that. I don't think that just didn't make it to this particular presentation yet, as this is an ongoing design. And then our plan for the brick facade is to do a lime washing of that facade so that the new and the existing brick is matches up a little bit. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to make an obvious new we don't want to have obvious new brick at the bottom. So it'll show a little bit of weathered age on that brick, but also make it consistent, the new to the old. Then we've got the sides of the buildings we're going to paint white, both the east and west sides. And then we've got the word sartorial in vertical metal letters, hopefully backlit. And we've got to work the details of that portion of it out. But that is on the east side above the canopy. You can see those letters on the left-hand side of the front facade. The only other thing I think of note is the sills on the lower windows. We're proposing a black material. We've called it black marble. the specific material may change slightly, but we do want to complement the black frames with a black sill there, give it a little bit of bite. So we're here looking for conceptual approval, and I would like to grab some feedback from you all so we can continue to improve that design. Oh, to give you a sense, yeah, this is, I apologize. The lower level will be occupied by sartorial. This will be a kind of a hybrid. I don't know, is anyone from the company on? Did we, it might just be Catalin and I.
No, you know what, this
well,
is
you're-
Liz Cooper. I'm on, and I think Zach is also on by phone. He may not be able to. Zach, are you here? He may not have his microphone, but I can at least explain. Yeah, it's a, oh, Zach, it looks like you are on.
I am here. Sorry, I'm in my vehicle on the phone, so I apologize for any connectivity issues or any background noise. But you do have me here, if everyone can hear me.
We can.
Briefly, the first floor and basement would be occupied by my business, Sartorial. It is a, as Pat was referencing, a kind of hybrid business concept in which we will be doing retail. As you can see on the ground floor there, the east side of the building is going to be primarily retail, and that is going to transition to the west half of the building, which is going to be primarily an entertainment space. What I want to do is men's style clothing. I say style because we welcome everyone who wants to wear this stuff these days. Anyone who feels this style fits their style. But one of our target markets is the wedding party suit industry. And so we feel as though having the entertainment portion, not only could a groomsmen party come in to get fitted and accessorized for the big day, but we could host them and entertain them while doing so with hopefully some light alcohol sales, a stage, a pool table, a barber chair is what we're going for, as well as a few other, entertainment factors and to tie the space together. As Pat mentioned, the upstairs, we are primarily looking to fill that with a tenant, hopefully in a related, mutually beneficial kind of industry. And then the basement we can use as some additional retail space, fitting space, but with the goal of perhaps some point down the road fitting in a speakeasy or something of the nature down there, once we figure out the alcohol side of things, obviously.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to mention is the rear of the second floor. We do have planned for a small apartment at this point. So there'll be a tiny little residential component. And then, of course, these are the demolition plans, probably not terribly interesting to you, but there's not a whole lot of stuff going on the inside of the building, with the exception of that south end. We're just kind of opening it up, make it more functional for Zach's retail and support areas. And then again, the upper level, I think we're going to try to open it up. It's got a lot of interior walls that are non-load bearing. Kind of open that up so that a new tenant, it's a little more appetizing to a new tenant. Right now it's chopped up in a bunch of small rooms. We've looked at it for multiple purposes and it just makes more sense to get it opened up. And then the last sheet is simply a site plan showing some potential development for parking once we get rid of that canopy. The canopy kind of hinders us a little bit. And now that the property to the west has been developed with townhomes there, we're a little bit shy on, all that extra parking that was there when it was part of the funeral home would have been convenient, but we're going to try to get as much parking on there as possible and supplement that with street parking. So any questions or comments? We're looking for as much constructive criticism as possible here so that we can continue to improve this and bring it back to you, take it to the next level.
I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about your lime washing technique proposed for the front to try to blend the new with the existing brick. But while we're on the site plan, I guess I'd also like to mention that I'm glad you're showing a landscape area up by the sidewalk. I can't read a dimension on there, but it looks like an appropriately sized, landscape area, and whether you're going to put a fence there or anything along the sidewalk, I guess we'd like to hear about that as your plans develop. Like maybe you haven't gotten that far yet. But so anyway, maybe you could tell us a little more about the line washing technique.
Yeah, Catalin, do you have your mic on? Do you want to explain that technique to them?
Yeah, so it's basically we would be using lime wash paint diluted with water. So even when it's first painted, it's not as solid color as white paint would be. And then we would go on with some water. Yeah, it's usually removed with a hose or something. So before the paint or the lime wash completely dries, they remove some patches so it looks more, the brick shows through a little bit more. So the brick facade now is a yellow or lilac colored brick, and we would try to find something very similar for the bottom part, but it's not going to be the same for sure. So we would with this method, I think we would be able to work them together. So even though the brick will show through a little bit, it will look more similar with the lime wash on it.
And I believe that the image that we've shown on the first sheet should be a good indicator inside that material schedule. I know it's small. Our next presentation will have some bigger images for you. But basically, it is the brick color, the existing brick color, cleaned, and then with a kind of a faint white glaze on it.
Is the existing brick painted, or what's the treatment there on the existing brick?
It's original. It's the original clay. It's a little bit beat up and a little bit, it's been sitting for 100 years, getting soot and stuff on it. But our biggest concern is that low piece. We can clean brick, but that initial lower 4 feet it's been under. I know there's holes in it because I've seen it myself, but it's also been under that poorly maintained veneer of marble for who knows how long, and we know we're going to have a lot of replacement down there. We know it's going to be patchy. I'm fearful for what I'm going to find when we open that up, to be honest with you.
And I have another question about the age of the building. Are you sure? I guess, do you have any, in terms of the history, both photos and I guess I would be surprised if the building itself, the full building, was from 1920 and that a portion of the building didn't predate that, and perhaps the facade now is more, like that there were modifications that would have put the effective date there. But have you been able to confirm that?
We haven't been able to find photos. Catalin might be able to reinforce that because she did a lot of that research.
Yes, at least two. So yeah, no, we don't. The surrounding buildings, yes, but not this building. We also reached out to the Bodnar family if they have something. They haven't come up with anything yet. So I mean, we can keep trying because I would also like to see what was added and when. So we know that the funeral home is there since the 20s, but I've also found information, but that was not exactly confirmed, that the building actually dates back to the late 1800s. So like, yeah, end of 1800s, but we were not able to confirm that. Yeah, fortunately.
Yeah, I think I would expect late 1800s based on the location and just the general age of the street and the commercial buildings on the street, as well as that side facade and the way the window rhythm is, the brick. So that would be my guess, is that perhaps that front wrap might be 20s and then later modified again in probably the 50s, as you said earlier. I'm just trying to date, if we can date the history of the building. And
So you could,
my,
one way to do that would be to look at the Sanborn maps, you know, the
Yeah.
Sanborn maps, there's insurance maps that were started in the mid 1800s and updated every, I think, 10 years or so, that show, they're maps that show what was there. And so you can track the history back and see if, you know, in 1900 or 1890, for example, there was at least a building that matches or similar to the footprint of this building that would help confirm its date, because, you know, I sort of agree with Antonia that there's some features on the side of the building, like the arched window heads and stuff, that would tend to indicate that, you know, the building is a 19th century building, but the front of the building is so dramatically different that, you know, without photograph, there's no way to determine what it originally looked like. But at least it would be helpful if you could find out, you know, confirm more the whether there was a building. It's like, I mean, there may have been a building here that was torn down for this, you know, that wasn't often the case, but it's certainly possible. But the Sanborn maps are a great way to, you know, track what was on this site over, you know, a longer period of time.
Yeah, we'll pull those up and see what we can find out there, and we might even make another trip down to the library to see if there's any, you know, sometimes you'll find these buildings in the background of another picture. We just kind of, sometimes we got to get a little bit creative as to how we search for those things.
Yes.
yeah, I think my preference would, or my hope is that we do have a pretty good date timeline of the building and the modifications to the building so that we can better assess the appropriateness of what you're proposing. You know, if we have several layers of historic information and historic facades, then we probably want to look to that first. You know, as our intention is to restore as much as possible, but you might have a couple different historic dates that would be appropriate to restore too.
Right, and the building department also has, you know, records that go back. You know, maybe these modifications were done, you know, without a permit, but the permit history might tell you something, because that should go back at least to the 1920s.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to give Tom Hanover a call and see if he can help me dig some of that out.
Great.
And then for me, in terms of what you're proposing, I'm hesitant on a lime wash treatment to historic brick. I would defer to Margaret. She's our, you know, specialist on material in that sense, but I'm not sure if I'm really keen on that if the current brick is not treated with paint or any kind of wash at the moment. And then the other thing that stood out to me a little bit on your elevations is there's a note like to paint the paneling below the window to match the brick. And I'm not sure if that meant paint it like a solid color or if it meant like a faux brick. I would not be a fan of a faux brick if that was what you were proposing, but I'm not sure if you just meant like a color.
Yeah, I think the intent was to apply a color there. I think we need to refine that intent and get it explained a little bit better. We also need to get, I think I need to get a closer eyes on that material that's there. Because of that gigantic canopy and the windows up there are currently fixed. It's a challenge to stick my head out there and get a real good look at the condition of that stuff. But yeah, we'll define that a little bit better the next time you see this.
Yes, and I would love more detailed and like close-up photos of that front facade. It's small in this presentation, and it would be great to know a lot more detail. I recall in that existing storefront doorway that there's some, isn't there some ironwork or some motifs on those side lights?
Yeah, I think you might be thinking of, I think there's some leaded glass behind
Okay,
windows, the two windows. It's strange. There's the original windows are there, but then there's another layer behind them of leaded glass on a wall that I think is furred out in there.
Yeah, I think
that's that detail that you're thinking of, I think.
Yeah, overall, just more detail, I think, to all of these changes would be helpful. More like looking at history, what's currently there, and what is going to end up being replaced with new. I also would want to know what treatments or what the plan would be more for the sides of the building as
Okay.
well. Because we do have some distinctive architectural features that are visible there. Especially that one side facing the existing parking, like that weird stone, there's a stone base, there's a paneling, old signage, just a little bit more detail on that. And I think too, all of us, or the board would, the first priority being the restoration effort, rather than a modification on those sides, unless I'm misspeaking and someone else disagrees.
I agree, I agree with everything Antonio just said, 100%. I will add 3 additional things that might be helpful when you come back to have peeled off that marble and give a more of a report as to the actual existing conditions down there towards the bottom, so we can evaluate that. And then the next, number 2, in addition to the brick, I want more information on the mortar that you intend on using with the new brick there to make sure that that mortar matches the mortar that's existing there and how the mortar is struck. Those will be important details. And then third and finally for me, the replacing the material on the canopy is fine, but I would really caution against using a faux copper color there. Using materials in the historic district, we tend to prefer things that are actual real and genuine. And if you use real copper, then it would patina like copper, it would look like copper, it would be copper. But to use a faux copper, it just doesn't strike, I think, the right balance there. And I prefer just to see a totally different color there than trying to, go with a faux looking material. I just don't think that would be appropriate. Those are my 3 comments.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I just wanted to add a couple things. Right now, it looks like on the front facade where you're removing the marble veneer, you just have brick going all the way down to the street level. Is that right? It doesn't look like there's any kind of base wall of any kind.
Correct. You're just peeling that straight down.
Okay. I don't know. It just feels to me more like for buildings in this neighborhood that usually there's like at least some sort of narrow base where it meets the sidewalk. Obviously there's like that higher level of marble that continues around to the side right now. There's kind of that datum line that's getting removed. So I guess it's just something that kind of caught my eye. I don't have like a really specific suggestion on it, but it does, I feel like it, I don't know, it does to me feel like there should maybe be at least some sort of thin base, even just for kind of weathering where it meets the sidewalk. And then my only other comment is just, I don't know if signage is signage part of this. I guess it's just conceptual anyway. I would really caution against vertically stacked letters personally. That's like very discouraged in the graphic design world. It's much less legible and it's not, I feel like most graphic designers really don't like to do that. So I think it could be worth looking at other possibilities for the signage treatment on the facade.
And then the attachment of what are the letters made of? How are they attached to the building? We usually like to see signage attached only through the mortar joint so it doesn't damage the brick. And you've got a lot of letters there. It seems like it might be difficult to get an attachment detail for those. And again, whether are they backlit? Are they floating? So think that through some more to give us some more information on the signage itself. And in response to Marika's thought on the base, you're proposing these what you're calling black stone sills for the first floor windows. Maybe you could use something like that as the base course, 4 inches, 6 inches, where the masonry meets grade there, meets the sidewalk. And that would I sort of agree with her concern that building might do well to have a base there of some kind, and that could help provide that. And then lastly, I mentioned before my concern about this lime wash technique, and we haven't heard from the Restoration Society on that. I think it would be useful to, when you come back, have you know, get your brick selection together so that you found a brick you think is right for that, and show us a picture of it, you know, hold it up against the brick that's there, so we have an idea of how different they are and how much variance there's going to be. And possibly even you could get somebody to do a sample of this lime wash on the building. So I think that would do you guys some good as well, to see what, you know, in a test area, what the result is likely to be.
Nia and Doug both pretty well expressed what I was going to say. I also would love to know if there's a historic photograph or some sort of research that could show. I feel like the building almost got an Art Deco makeover at some point. And if you could justify which time period in its history you're working towards in terms of the restoration plus, you know, your alterations, I think that would help. I would be hesitant to approve the lime wash. As Doug said, I would like to see thorough research into what kind of brick you could possibly get to do a match, and maybe even test cleaning, a gentle, you know, cleaning of the existing with something new. Maybe you could match a little closer than you think. I'd like to see that research. And then in terms of like the canopy, again, like I think what's there, it's got kind of that Art Deco with the curve and the materials, and same with the little elements. I'm on Google Street View, so I can zoom in a little bit. Those little elements by the front door that are like scrolling leaves. So if you're looking towards more of it's potentially older original build date, you don't even need to keep with like that metal canopy style. You could explore something that's more traditional to an older building, like an awning. But I think understanding its history and understanding its changes will help you make a case for what you want to do. And then I also have one question. I can see a little better on Street View. Above that metal canopy, below the windows, what is the material there? It looks like in the rendering, you're just proposing it to also receive the lime wash.
Yeah, that's that area that we talked about needing a little bit more study. It's
Okay.
It's a stone or a concrete. It's difficult to see from the street because of that giant canopy. It's actually easier. I'm looking at Street View right now as well, and it's a heck of a lot easier to see from this than it is when you're actually there. I think I need to get a ladder out.
Yeah, because
I
I
need to
just
study
think
that, find out what that is. That color isn't necessarily complementary to the brick that's there, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be addressed.
yeah, I mean, maybe that's another area of infill instead of keeping it. What is the condition, the material, vertical material on the sides? What is the condition of that?
Not great in some
Yeah.
areas.
I mean, is that worth keeping too? I just have to wonder.
I'd have to have that conversation with the property owner and what their objective there would be, but yeah, I'd have to talk with them about that. I think the further back you go on this building, the more severe the decay is.
Yeah,
and-
because I don't know that you'd want to replace with more vertical siding if it's so deteriorated.
yeah,
That's
there-
just a question. And I understand you have to talk to the.
Yeah,
building owner about
we'll
that.
work with them about how they want to address that. We haven't reached that phase with them yet. There's 15 different materials on this building somehow, and
Yeah, it's
we're
a
trying to
mess.
figure out how to bring all of those things together without ruining the aesthetic that it already does have. So
I would just urge that thorough dive into possibly trying to match and clean the existing brick. And like Doug said, photo samples, that would really be helpful.
today,
You
what
know,
I'm
one other thing that you didn't mention that you explored, maybe you did, is taking the area that has the marble on it now, and instead of trying to unify the whole thing, one thing that occurs to me looking at this is, what if you took that 4 feet or whatever it is high from the grade up to where the marble is, and tried some banding technique? Don't try to match the yellow brick, but you know, sort of like the concept of what the Cleveland Museum of Art did, a banded, you know, different gray and black stone or something like that. You might be able to come up with a handsome combination that doesn't try to unify the whole thing, but you know, a different approach from saying, gosh, we can't match the brick, so let's paint the whole damn thing.
Right. Yeah, Doug, I actually agree with you. As I was about to say there at the same time as you, I'm actually hoping when we do our deep dive into the research is that I find that there was a water table of a different color underneath there, because then I don't have to worry about the lime wash. I can simply clean the brick, and then we can get a brick that's as close as possible to that other color from the original. Now, you know, if I'm looking at the side of this building, they've got, you know, kind of a rusticated look on the side. I'm hoping that's not what was on the front originally.
Probably not. That was, you know, if the building is a 19th century building, it probably had a more finished brick on the front and then a utility common brick on the sides.
Yeah, that's probably what we're going to find. But I do know from seeing some of that stuff peeled back that there is brick of a similar color there. But again, if we go back and look at some historic photos of this building, if we can find anything, even like I said, sometimes I'll find things that are 5 addresses down, but I can kind of tell what's going on in the corner of the picture. If we can see a difference between the field brick and the water table brick, we'll try to head towards that era of this property, and that would solve us a lot of problems.
Right. I don't think you're going to find anything that's going to say that, you know, show what it looked like as a 19th century building if it is actually that old. And it would be a huge undertaking to try to return it to that at this point. Let's say it was a typical storefront kind of building on the first floor, the big storefront. That's an enormous alteration of this, and then that wouldn't work with the canopy that's up there, because that's from an entirely different era. So, you know, and one other little thing that nobody mentioned yet that I suppose you may be aware of is that the, you know, Secretary of Interior's, you know, guidelines suggest that anything that's been part of the building for 50 years or more is now part of its history. So I think what we've got here is an Art Deco facade.
Yeah, we kind of do.
That was my initial thought, but then looking at, you know, all that stuff going on the side, it's just, I guess, yeah, pinpointing one era would help with the decisions.
Right. So let's see if you can get some better history track on this.
Will do.
Okay.
I have one other question / comment on the site plan. I guess and this is more probably like neighborhood focused than perhaps a historic design review, but the parking is super tight. And I know that you guys are walking that fine line where you're trying to provide parking to appease the business and also appease the part of the neighborhood that gets loud about parking, but that's tight. And I'm also worried about how that would function with safety at the pedestrian. You have like 2 buildings coming up to this driveway, the visibility, and the likelihood are patrons going to actually pull all the way down and turn around to pull out of there safely versus trying to back out that whole way. Just seems like, and again, that's maybe not for this board, but I would say visit that, you know, treat that very carefully, get feedback early from Ohio City and from the Black Clubs or whomever you need to on that, because that definitely gives me pause with how that would actually function safely.
Okay.
And then I guess related, any other variances that you might need for this property?
I don't know. I'll have to ask the civil team what their thoughts were on it. I don't have those answers right here.
Like it's currently business with residential above, right? Or is that was that used as office space above? I've been in the building, so I know what's inside currently. So I don't know if you might have a change of use related to this.
There may be, I don't know, well, there technically may be a change of use, but I highly doubt that the city of Cleveland has a record of any apartments up there.
Okay.
They're probably being used, but they're probably.
I know that
probably
they're
in the sea of O.
physically, there's physically apartments above there.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
okay.
right now there's a makeshift apartment in the back parking lot, which we're hoping to reach a point where that's gone too. So
Oh,
there's someone that's taken up residence out back. So
yeah, I know that there have been security issues. My kid's daycare is the daycare behind, like kind of tucked back there. And I know that they have had a lot of issues with this area as a whole. So
hopefully we can resolve that by getting this property developed.
that'd be great.
Great.
If there's no further questions, does the applicant feel that they've had enough feedback to go off of?
Yes, I believe we've got enough information to come back. I assume that we need to come back again. Hopefully we can get ourselves on the next agenda. We'll work through that later. Come back again with some refined information.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can just reach out to me.
Okay.
I would like to just kind of stress again, I think Doug brought this up at the beginning of our comments, but anything that can be done to add either like a grass median or other plantings along the side, I think would be really helpful. This stretch of Lorraine is in bad need of greenery and trees, in my opinion, so.
Yeah, that was my first note. Sorry, Alex.
No, I totally agree. That's all.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, we appreciate the feedback and we look forward to seeing you again with a revised approach.
Great. Good luck. We look forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No need to apologize.
With that, Doug, do you want to call the meeting to close?
Yes, but that being our last item, I'll call this meeting, the Design Review Committee adjourned. Early, by the way, for all the times we've gone over, we came up within our allotted time with half an hour to spare. Wow, what do you know?